Okay, today's lesson is very simple. It's purely how to start creating an XNA game and create a new game project. Before you can start doing this, you first of all need to have installed the XNA add-on. That's very simple if you're using anything other than Windows 8. If you've got Windows 8, there is an extra installation step you have to go through because of some compatibility issues. If you have a look on my files, you'll see there's a guide on how to get these things installed. So we want to start a new XNA game. So the first thing is, same as we always do in Visual Studio, we go to New Project. What you'll find is, because you've installed the XNA add-on, you'll now have under Visual C# XNA Game Studio. And under there you've got a number of options in terms of different things that you can create for XNA. We're working with a Windows game. Don't worry about Xbox 360. If you want, you can convert your Windows game to an Xbox 360 once you've started the project just by selecting a menu option. It's not too difficult. So first thing I'm going to do is give it a meaningful name for what we're doing today. Sample game will do. This will then be saved at the moment in your Visual Studio 2010 projects. And obviously it will set up the solution name as sample game. Clicking OK will allow Visual Studio to do its normal activities, which is to create all the default files you need. Prior to this, you've probably used things like console application or Windows application, so you're used to this basic principle. Two things you need to note immediately you create the game. One is your solution has two projects. The sample game, and that is all of your C# files, and a sample game content. That is for all of your images, music, fonts, all the things that you need to make your game actually graphically and visually interesting. Alright, so don't keep adding images to your sample game. It's the wrong location and you won't be able to load them easily. Now we've started, what's actually happened is you've been given game1.cs. Okay? This is effectively the framework for creating a simple XNA game. Running that would give you a blank screen with a close box. Okay, we can switch into full screen mode if we want to, but that's for a later session. I just want to quickly take you through the basic elements of the game framework. So to make it simple to read, I'm just going to use outlining to collapse to the definition so we can see all of the methods that are inside our game class. Okay, so we'll start with the basics. Game 1 inherits the Microsoft XNA framework game. So that means that this particular project and this class is based on the XNA framework. There are two fundamental variables that are created, which are objects. The graphics device manager, which gives us screen access, and sprite batch, and this gives us the facility for drawing stuff onto the screen. Okay, so you can't remove those, and I would suggest that you don't change the names because it keeps it consistent with most XNA game development. So public game 1 is our constructor. It's the thing that's called immediately we create our game. At the moment, it doesn't have an awful lot in it, and we'll probably add the extra bits as we go along. But the initial part of our constructor is to effectively create our graphics device manager. Okay, so it's at this point that this object is created so that we can use it the moment we start. It also tells us where are we storing all of our content, so our images, etc. So we leave that alone because it's fairly consistent and there's no particular reason why we would need to change it. Right, what we now have are all the main methods that are used by XNA. Okay, so initialize allows us to set up any basic information and variables that we need when we start a game. Okay, so if you open it now, you'll see it's completely empty and it says to do your initialization logic here. Right, this line here means that we are calling the original game initialize method, which sets everything up in XNA. Don't remove that line. and wherever possible try and do all the work that you need to do above that. Okay, you'll find that each section that we look at there will be a base and a call to that. So, load content. This is where we do the majority of our work for our game. Okay, at the moment it's empty, and we will start putting stuff in the next session. Sprite batch is then initialized here. Okay, so what this should tell you is that the constructor is called first, and then load content is actually called later in the process of setting up this object. Okay, because we wouldn't be able to create the sprite batch without the graphics device itself. Unload content is only called when we close our game. For most of what we do, it will be likely that we won't actually put anything in there at all, or potentially it might be used to save user details like high scores, etc. at the end of our game. Right, now we come to the most important set of methods that we actually need. Update and draw give us the ability to, one, change how things act in our game, so we can use the update method to do things like read the keyboard, read the mouse, read the joystick, update information about sprites on screen, move things around, play music, all of the sort of things that you would expect most games to do. Everything in there is calculation or reading and responding to user input. The second method we have here is draw. Now draw fundamentally at the moment does nothing apart from clear our screen. At the moment it's called file blue, and then call the base draw method of the XNA game object. So, you know, simple changes that we can make straight away. It might not like call file blue, so we can just go into there, and there are some colour constants, so I like black for my games. Okay, at that point we would now create a game that would actually have a black screen. So all this operates pretty much the same way as you'd expect in any sort of normal XNA game. This is consistent throughout all XNA development. What you will find is there are better ways than writing all of your code into one class, and we will talk about that as we go along through the different sessions. So how do we actually do anything with this? Well, the first thing is that, and you'll have to apologise if there's a virus checker that comes up when I do this. The first thing we can do is just compile and run that. Okay, and that gives us our game screen. At the moment it's not particularly exciting. It's probably 800 by 600 pixels in size, and to be honest with you, we're going to go through how you modify these things later. At the moment the only way you can exit this game is to close the close box, or if you've got a game controller connected you could press the back button. How do I know that? Well, in our update method we have a piece of code that measures whether or not a button has been pressed on our game pad. Okay, so in this case we're looking for the first player on the system. Alright, we're getting the state of the gamepad, we're looking at the buttons on the gamepad, and basically at that point if the user has pressed the back button its state will be pressed, and we will call this.exit, which will exit the game. The obvious thing to say is that we can add in additional features in there. Normally the one that we all need is because we don't have a game connected, is if we do something with a keyboard. So at that point what we've done is we've checked to see whether the user has pressed on the keyboard the escape key, so they've pressed it down, and if it is then we exit the game. Obviously that's virtually impossible to demonstrate to you, but effectively pressing the escape key at that point will give us an opportunity to exit, just like the gamepad. Right, apart from that, obviously we have the normal functions of save all to make sure that everything's up to date. If you don't like the idea of having everything folded up in your class so you can't see anything, all I can say is it's much easier if you do. Apart from that, you'll need to add certain items in here as we progress along, but for the moment that's the end of the first tutorial.